Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic. My name is Shane. I can't see my eyes. I think I have sexy eyes. But Andrew has got the sexiest eyes. And that's because we're old and we'd like to talk about D&D. So as you age, your eyes just pop out of your head and look so much grander, so much... I'm going to shut up now. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's been quite a 2 weeks or so here.
Yeah, we have had such excitement in the D&D realm. Wizards of the Coast slash Hasbro went crazy for a while and now have skulked back to somewhere else. I don't know what to think. I've watched a lot of commentary. I've been reading a lot, and I just noticed today or yesterday that there's some mainstream media finally picking up on it, which is kind of nice. And but you know what? We'll talk about that in a lot more detail in the future when it goes crazy. But what are your thoughts of the last 7 days or so?
Well, yeah, it's basically since the new year. Well, what I've been doing is rewriting our entire booklet for our new Kickstarter,
Yeah,
figuring out a way to make content that is open for any RPG.
right.
So we think we're close to something. Yeah, I think it should work. We're definitely not using the OGL anymore. Um, so Wizards has walked back a few things. They say there's going to be a draft at least, or some of the new OGL 2.0 on Friday, and yeah, we're going to try to make something that can be used by D&D players, Pathfinder, OSR, um, and then our adventures that we were planning on making in our World of Mir update and other books we plan, none of those actually need the OGL at all. They can all be
Yeah.
100% system agnostic. So yeah, it's been a lot of work in the 2 weeks. Um, it's just yeah, it's just too many risks to go forward under the old system where, especially with stat blocks, that's the big issue. Nobody
Right.
knows exactly what is okay and what's not okay. So you have to make sure you're doing your own thing, basically. And we're going to have our own spells, our own skills. So the new monster book will actually have a spell book at the back of the book that details our new magic spells and our
Nice.
new skills. Um, yeah.
I I I would love to rant, but I'm not going to because we ranted last time, and it, but I'll just say this that it didn't take much for them to destroy their community. Those that actually gave money to them, a lot of money. Like I bought
Mhm.
all the books, I bought all that kind of stuff. Um, but I'm so glad that a lot of the big publishers have turned around and said, yeah, we got this thing called Orc, we got this other thing called
Mhm.
whatever. Um, but I'm glad that yeah, I'm happy stuff is happening that's in a
Yeah, it
positive
remains to
way.
be seen how good Orc actually is.
Oh,
Um,
true.
but yeah, it's true. It's There was an article in the Guardian last week that said a whole bunch of players are leaving the game now. Excuse me, that's not true. We're leaving. A lot of people are leaving the name and the
Yeah,
official new version of the game. Um, I don't know how many people are going to move to 6.0, and I think a lot of it is that they're trying to make this whole thing a virtual tabletop system, and maybe
yeah.
even trying to get rid of print. Um, but guess what? People like print,
Well, put it
and
this
people
way,
like
I wouldn't do the
playing this
virtual
game with
thing.
their
Forget it.
friends. Sorry.
I wouldn't do virtual. Forget it. I'm out. I've finally gone back. As I've said before in the last couple of years, going back to paper
Mm,
and pencil because the tools, sure, they're cool, but I think they just get in the way. And if you're
yeah.
going to virtualize the whole thing, then just I'm not interested at all.
Yes. So on to more uplifting news, and there is
Yes.
actually a positive side of it. We talked last week about how people will try new games and they'll be more creative ideas, and that's all really good. And one of those creative ideas is in hardcover form over here. Da-da-da. So this is the first printing of Monsters of Phelan 2.
I'm trying to get it and have it pass through the internet. It's just not working.
It's the fifth book in our monster series, the companion to Monsters of Feyland. The digital version is already available. The links will be below. The printed version, there's a few changes we're making, not many. Actually, 5 small changes. Well, one thing is labeled incorrectly on a picture, but those changes, hopefully, the turnaround will be 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll have the final version of the book, and then the Kickstarter backers will get theirs, and then we'll release it publicly. So,
nice.
Digital version is ready to go. Printed books on the way.
I'm excited. I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Well, and we're just about to release the cover for the next book, which hopefully will go to Kickstarter next month. That's the plan. Probably the middle of February, I would expect, mid to the end of February. And that one is the one that I've been rewriting, the booklet that will be presented to Kickstarter. Because what we've done the last few times is we've basically written a chapter of the book and then released it with the Kickstarter for download. Free download, so people can see what the rest of the book will be like.
Right.
And yeah, we'll announce that very soon.
It's all very cool, and I'm glad that it hasn't, made you so depressed that you're like, forget it, I'm done, I'm out.
Oh, no way. I have so many ideas of things to do. I mean, we've made a few adventures, but we haven't really got into that. And there's more to add to our world of Mir. So, oh, no way. I'm on board, and I have people.
I'll help. I can help. I can write. I'm okay.
Awesome.
So that's actually, I can't wait to mid-February. I want to give you money. I have money. Take it. But today's episode, we're going to be talking about the top 10 underrated magic items. I actually delved deep into deciding which ones I wanted. There were some that I thought, were kind of obvious, so I thought I'd just ignore those. So I actually went out and I pulled books off the shelf and was looking at different books that have items that aren't necessarily in the DM's guide, that aren't necessarily in the player's guide, and I found some really cool ones. But your number 10 is first.
Yes. So yeah, that's great. So we both of us tried to choose ones that weren't the most obvious choices. We did our top 10 magic items a while ago, or actually they were my top 10, weren't they?
Yes.
So these are ones that maybe wouldn't be so obvious at first glance. So number 10 is the Robe of Eyes. So this enables you to see in any direction, which I think is super useful. You're in the tavern and some thug sneaking up behind you, and you also have advantage on all perception checks. You have dark vision to 120 feet, so double most normal creatures' dark vision, except for maybe drow and a few others.
Right.
And you can see invisible creatures and into the ethereal plane.
Now, the ethereal plane thing, is that allow, like, if somebody blinks out or if somebody is tossed into a different dimension, is that kind of allow people to see into that?
Yeah, it would depend on the DM. Like, in certain cases, I would say, yeah. It would depend on the DM. But there are creatures that can pass into the ethereal plane and then come back. So you could actually watch them, and like the Nightmare, I'm pretty sure, can do that. And the Night Hag, I believe. There's a few creatures that you could track them where you could see them coming from that other plane. Yeah.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
Oh, you thought you were going to do that. Let me tell you.
Yeah. All right. Number 9.
Number 9 is one of mine. It's the Eagle Whistle. This is actually something I read ages ago, and I just thought it was kind of a cool idea to have a device, not necessarily just this whistle, but a device that you could do something with So in this case, you're able to blow on this whistle, and you can fly twice as fast as your character's walking speed. And if you blow it, you can blow it continuously for a number of rounds equal to 5 plus 5 times your Constitution modifier. So basically, as long as you don't talk or interrupt yourself, try to hold your breath or start suffocating, which I thought was a really great example. You can keep flying, and of course, when you stop blowing, then of course you will land. Now, this item kind of it reminded me of a couple parts of some of the adventures that you've run, where characters are doing something, and then it's like, aha, I've got an advantage in this particular encounter, and then something interrupts them, and then suddenly they're falling to their death. So this one totally rang out for me as a really cool thing. But of course, it's like, oh, you roll a dexterity check, please. Oh, well, you lose your whistle into the bottom of the ocean, and then suddenly you're crashing into a mountainside. But I just thought it's a cool thing. Use it wisely, though, because otherwise you're a pancake. Number 8
right.
is one of my favorite items, by the way.
Yeah, so number 8, the dancing sword. So this takes advantage of the opportunity to use bonus actions, which you have sometimes. You speak a command word, you toss this sword into the air. It hovers up to 30 feet away from you, so it can be fairly far away, and attacks a creature. Then you can use a bonus action to have it fly to another 30 feet and attack. And that would be, you would do that. Yeah, you would. So the second bonus action you'd have to do on your next turn. You couldn't do that because you've already used one for the command word.
Right.
And then after it attacks for the 4th time, it returns to your hand if your hand is free. So yeah, I think in many cases very useful, especially if a character is attacking with ranged weapons and then wants to use this sword as well. That's another option. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It could be a backup item too, that maybe you're in some kind of trouble or you lose one of your other weapons, and you have this as your backup.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I love that one because it was actually one of the ones I thought I might pick, but you already had it in the list. Number 7 is the Lifewell tattoo. I had to dig for this one because I remembered reading something about a tattoo that could do stuff, and I had to hunt around for this one. But basically, it's a tattoo that you can have tattooed onto your character's skin, and it can do different things through the attunement process. Where once your tattoo is complete, you can have things like resistance to necrotic damage, and you get a life ward where if you are dropped to 0 points, you get a point back and you don't die or fall unconscious. But it wasn't really about this particular tattoo. I just kind of like the idea of tattoos or some sort of thing that you permanently attach or semi-permanently attach to your character's body that can do things, where you're not having to carry something, not having to say something. And I just haven't seen this used ever. I don't think I've ever seen a tattoo used in any of our adventures. Maybe some of the NPCs might have had them, but character-wise, no one has ever really chosen this as an option. So I just kind of like that idea. I think it's cool.
Nice. Yeah, that's something that came up in the last few years. People adding that to the game. Something. Yeah, I don't think it definitely wasn't around when I started playing in first edition.
Yeah, this one came from Tasha's Cauldron, I think, which is a relatively recent book.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's a cool idea, rather than having to carry around a cloak or whatever.
Yeah.
Segueing into number 6.
Yeah, you can tell I'm a fan of all the cloaks and robes. So number 6, the Cloak of Arachnida. So poison resistance, climbing speed equal to your walking speed, which is pretty useful. They are going to change that in the next edition, which that's one of the few things I probably would also do. Where now in 5th edition, if you have 2 different speeds, you can actually do those 2 different movements. So if you can walk 30 feet and swim at 30 feet. You can actually do both of those in one action.
I'm going to walk, dive into the water, and then swim.
Yeah, like dragons. Dragons can do that right now. They could walk, fly, swim, but they're going to change it so you can only do one kind of movement.
Okay.
So this one would still be helpful either way. It gives you spider climb, of course. You can't be caught in webs,
Which is very
and
useful.
you get to cast the web spell once a day.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So really useful for lots of different circumstances. Especially, I could see that being of use in cities and dungeons.
I see that being useful in the Underdark a lot.
Underdark for sure,
Yeah,
especially the not getting caught in webs.
exactly. That was exactly what I thought when I saw that. I thought
Yeah.
that would be, well, when would it not be useful for that?
Yeah.
Number 5 is the Potion of Growth. I only really picked this one because very rarely have I seen it being used. I think maybe once in the entire history of me playing the game.
Hmm.
But I kind of like that idea where you have the ability to. Alice in Wonderland totally comes to mind, where it's like,
Hmm.
growing and shrinking and those kinds of activities or actions are very useful and I think get neglected as on a whole. I think there's been like adventures that you run where there's been chances where it's like, oh well, we have to get into this castle or whatever, and then somebody, usually me, uh, you know, morphs into a spider or something and goes and does some reconnaissance. But essentially, but the potion of growth, making your character just grow for a while, and I thought it would be cool to like do it for 4 hours. So suddenly you're just like this big lumbering character that's walking through town. Or, but of course, it does have issues where don't do it in a small dungeon. So suddenly you are excessively big and not able to move around that much.
Yeah, I think it's really underused. It's funny because it is low level treasure in fifth edition, and
Yeah.
I always give this out. I have this always all the time because I think it's so useful. But as you said, very
It
few
doesn't
people
get
actually
used.
use it, and I find that in general. We haven't really talked about that yet, but in general, in modern D&D, I find a lot of players forget their magic items or don't use them.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people just generally stay with their weapons, their spells. Maybe if they have one really powerful magic item, they might use it a bit. But the lower level ones and their basic equipment, people don't use as much as they could, in my opinion.
No, I agree because one of the problems that I have as a player is if I have a cool object or some sort of thing that I could use, I generally will write it on the back of the sheet
Hmm.
or on the next sheet. So it's not really something that pops them. It's like, oh, wow, what could I do? And so you're looking at your character sheet, everything you could ever want right there. But if you flip the page or turn it over, oh, wait, I could totally use that thing. It's a hard skill to pick up, I have to admit. There's only a few players that I know of that I've watched play that are like, I'm gonna do that thing, and like, oh right, they picked it up like two sessions ago, and
Yeah,
I had no memory of that.
yeah.
Um, Number 4 is I think is also mine, the rope of mending. Um, People are always talking about in game when you're playing. It's like, oh, who has rope? I have some rope. I can do that with the rope. I can tie them up with my rope. But the rope of mending is something that, again, one of those things rarely seen where you can have a piece of rope that you can actually cut up and do other things with and then put it back together. Because sometimes it's like, well, you have to climb this 10-foot wall. Oh, okay, I'll just use 50 feet of rope and toss it over, which is okay. But in reality, it'd be kind of cumbersome. Like, oh god, I have way too much rope. I don't need that much. So there's and you could get inventive with stuff. Different ways of, oh, I have to tie up 20 people. All right, I'm gonna cut this into, and then when it gets back together, then you suddenly have a 50-foot rope again. So yeah, I mean it's pretty basic. It's a pretty basic one.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Very useful. And like you say, there's lots of ways you could use this to pull something, to make a small little bridge. Um, yeah, obviously tying up enemies.
I
Yeah,
like the bridge idea. That's actually very cool.
yeah. There's so many things you could do. At number three, guess what? It's another robe or cloak. This is Robe of Stars. You get +1 to all your saves, so right there, that's pretty good. You get to use 6 magic missiles spells at 5th level. Um, I believe once you've done that, that's the stars on the robe. I believe once you've done that,
Okay.
that's it's done. But it also enables you to use an action to enter the astral plane. I think also come back. Yeah. So this was
It
pretty
just
neat.
sends you there, and that's
Yeah.
you're wherever you are. You
Yeah.
is where you are.
Hey, I have some monsters like that. So I've been working on one this week, which sends you to a void, and it doesn't send you back. Um,
Those kinds of creatures are so fun.
yeah, so I think this is a really good one. It's a good one for really any class. Um, Although wizards to escape by going to the astral plane, a spellcaster to escape like that and to have +1 to saves, it's pretty useful for spellcasters. And
Yeah,
it goes with the theme if you have magic missiles. Um, yeah, it's good.
it's a good one. Number two was one that I found while leafing through the pages of one of my books, and I had never seen this one before, which probably means I've never seen it in game. But a prosthetic limb, where this item will replace a lost limb, a hand, arm, foot, leg, or similar body part. While the prosthetic is attached, it functions identically to the part it replaced. You can take it off and put it back using an action, and it can't be removed against your will, which I thought was interesting. And of course, if you die, it does detach and falls to the ground. This one I just had to put it in because we've had so many players that have had characters lose noses, lose tongues, lose their ears, lose all kinds of things. And I thought, yeah, actually, this is a useful object that if you actually had one and somebody was injured in the party, uh, they would be at disadvantage, of course. But hey, no, wait, put on this thing. All right, when we can heal you or do whatever, then you could have the player come back to full strength almost immediately. So I don't know. I just thought it was a cool thing, and again, I've never seen it in game ever. But of course, I don't know. Maybe I was sleeping. Who knows?
Yeah, it's useful. It reminds me, there is of course the regenerate spell where you can bring back a limb or something. I think that's yeah. There's a spell something like called like regenerate or something similar to that in fifth
Yeah.
edition. So this is somewhat similar, except you wouldn't need somebody to cast the spell. And in games like ours, where we have extra effects from critical hits, um, this would be pretty useful to have around.
And it would be cool to see other versions of it, like made of different sort of like metals or something, or made of stone, or made of this or that, and actually
Mhm,
be
mhm.
weaponized almost. That's not what this is, but it would be kind of cool. Just throwing those ideas out there into the ether. And number one
Number
on the
one,
list.
yes, one of my all-time favorites, Nolzur's Marvelous Pigments. There's a mouthful, and not used that many times. I think I've had it in as treasure in 2 campaigns, and it was used extensively in one campaign. Once the players figured out what it could do, they used it all the time. So it's 1 to 4 pots of these pigments, different colors, and they come with brushes. When you brush this pigment onto the surface, paint flows out and allows you to create 3-dimensional objects by painting them onto 2-dimensional surfaces. So you could, if you're, say you're in a house and there's a wall there, you could paint a window and create a window and then climb out of the window outside of the building. You could paint a door. You could paint rooms, entire rooms. Um, there is a limit to the amount that you have, but you could paint holes. You could paint a pit, like you could be chased by goblins in a dungeon and just paint a quick pit trap. And then you could paint weapons. You can paint trees. Um, but nothing that you create can have a value of more than 25 gold pieces.
Darn. Of course, that means that you could still do things like, I guess, swords, very
Some
basic
swords,
swords.
yeah, probably a short sword. I think a great sword is like 50 gold, and you couldn't paint like chainmail or plate armor. Um,
Hang on, just a minute, guys. Just a minute.
yeah,
I'm almost there.
the whole army is painted in plate armor. I love this idea. I think it's super creative. It's almost like you're the player painting painting part of the game and painting it the way you want it to be. It's
That
an
is cool.
amazing idea. It reminds me of sort of, I've been writing these books about Feyland, about fairies. It reminds me of that.
It's like the visual right away. Kind of, I think of like the stained glass warrior from young Sherlock Holmes back in the day, which was this sort of 2D sword carrying thing.
Yeah,
But also, like just painting the armor on it actually looks like what you painted, but it has the attributes of whatever you painted, which would
yeah,
be kind of cool. Like visually, it
yeah. It
just
also
kind of
reminds
looks
me of
interesting.
those movies where they cross over animation and um, um, what's it called? My brain is frozen. Animation and live action. So
Yes,
like Cool World is probably my favorite example of that. Also like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Some of those movies where they blend the animated and the live action. That sort of reminds me of this as well.
it's. I mean, I want to have this. Please put this in a game that we play, because I'm sure my character or some character that I have
Yeah,
will enjoy it.
done and done.
And our list is complete.
Yes.
Um, So, overall, don't forget to follow us on the whole social media world. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. All of those things are down below because Andrew's very diligent at doing that. And by the way, there's this book right here that Kickstarter people backing the Kickstarter will get soon. And then, of course, you could buy it as well if you didn't know there was a Kickstarter for it. Um, and yeah, come back. Tell us stuff. Send comments in the thing, and so we can actually talk to you, and you can give us ideas that you might want
Yeah.
us to talk about.
Chat with us on
Yeah.
Twitter. We have a Twitter
Yep.
page, and yeah,
And all the things the cool kids do. But until next time, next week, we'll see you then. Thank you all. Bye bye.
later.